Good morning, good morning. We are live from the Hive. Hello, hello. I hope there's sound for me. Is there sound for me? You said there was no sound on my little video I was sharing there. So, okay, let me share it again. Sorry, I don't know what happened. It doesn't say that there's no sound. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna share this one. I hope that gets sound. Hey, okay. So that's what I wanted to start with. I wanted to open with that. So I'm talking about centipedes today, and Big Red was the coolest, biggest centipede that I've ever owned. Not with us anymore, unfortunately. Centipedes do live for a long time, though, so we did have Big Red for quite a while. Uh, Big Red liked to dig and climb. Big Red was a Scolopendra suspenice of a I believe that Big Red, if I remember correctly, was of a form called a Chinese fire dragon color molt. So, sorry, I have a frog in my. That's what caused the coffee spill too. I coughed into my coffee cup. It was tragic. You all get leopard print leggings today because I did have Arctic blue leggings on, something different, and now those were covered with coffee, so I changed. So now I'm dressed like this. My computer desk is all cleaned up. I thought about trying to play that video. I'm glad I didn't try to go ahead and play the Big Red video while I was cleaning up because I never would have noticed that you all couldn't hear it. And I like you guys to be able to hear me play my instruments and stuff, because I'm trying to get back into music a little bit, and I want to start trying to play harmonica and guitar and stuff again. So I was pretty decent at it in the past. Hey, hey, all you beautiful, beautiful people. Let me say hi to everybody this morning. And we'll get back into talking to big. Tripping over my own tongue. I'm a mess this morning. Then we'll get back to talking about Big Red. So who do we have this morning? Mark Caesar in One Ring, Sandy, John Hudson, Greg Hartwick, Jason Jacoby. Hello, hello, everybody. And then we have Second Wave, starting with student Dr. Ben, the amazing and brilliant student Dr. Ben. If you missed our show last Saturday, we talked about the recurrent laryngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. It was a fun show. So if you missed that, it's still out there. Go watch it. Go check it out. We have some good laughs. Cadence, hello, hello. Look at the trees. Okay, Critical Cupcake. Hey, sweetie, good to see you. Cosmic Kyle. Pale Blue Mama. Hello, lovely lady. Hi, you Piglio Logos. It's good to see you. Did I already drop a hello to John Hudson? If I didn't, here's one for you now. Native Atheist and Gary Priestley. All right, and that's it for my intros. If anybody more pops in, hello, hello. I'm probably not going to single you out. But back to Scolopendra, because that's what I'm excited to talk about today. Scolopendra, giant centipedes. Okay, so I'm running a little behind, so I may get right into that because we're cornering some giant centipedes today too. But that's not what centipedes are all about. Centipedes are very real, very powerful predators. My opinion, my humble human opinion, that Scolopendra is probably the most efficient predatory clade of arthropods on the planet, at least terrestrially speaking, on land. So efficient. They have a lot of features that we see. They're kind of overkill. They really are. They're set up with a bit of a arsenal that's more than they really need, because they have constriction power, like a boa constrictor. They can wrap around their prey and crush it. They can literally crush their prey to death. That's a physical capability that they have most of the time when they're dealing with similar sized prey. They'll wrap around it first before they bite it. So very similar to a snake, but they're also, like, pound for pound, they're highly venomous, highly venomous. All of them, every single one of them. Now, it's going to be, I hate you. I'm going to deal with that at some point. Matter of fact, I'm going to scoot over this way and see if it helps a bit. So if I'm off center, that's why. We'll just have to deal with it. Yeah. So I'm not in the light anymore. I can't handle it anymore. All right. Maybe I'm a Scolopendra and I hide from the light, because Scolopendras don't have great eyes. They have six eyes total. They got three little eye clusters on either side, but they don't really like the light and don't want too much to do with it. They like to live in dark places. And if you shine the light on them, they'll try to find a place to a way to get away from it. So just a fun little tidbit about Scolopendra. And they get huge. And when someone asked in the chat how big was Big Red? Big Red was, on his death, his or her death, I don't know for sure for that one, was probably, I think I measured him out at like, without his, without the antenna being included, including the terminal legs though. So measuring centipedes gets kind of, yeah, hold on, let me talk about that real quick. Pull this up here. I'll just use this image. Okay, so giant centipede. Yeah, let me use this image. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up so you guys can see. We're going to talk about measuring centipedes. Weird topic, but you got to give the audience what they want, right? So, share this right here. Okay, so a centipede. You can see my mouse, right? Make sure you can see the mouse. Yep, you can see the mouse. Okay, all right, let's get into it. So, when you measure a centipede, you cannot measure with the antenna. So you got to cut the antenna off. You don't include those as part of your total measurement. You start from here. Okay, you start from right here, and you go all the way back. And you'd think you'd stop here, since you can't use the antenna. You can use these two, but these are actually legs. These are the animal's terminal legs. Centipedes have repurposed legs like crazy. They got these ones that are basically serving as pseudo antennae to make it difficult for predators and such to determine where the head is, where the bitey end is. That's they have enough legs to spare, so they can use some for decoys and stuff. And they can lose legs too. Centipedes can lose legs like crazy. Big Red didn't lose a lot of legs. I think Big Red probably lost a total of 2 legs the whole time I had him. One time was my fault because his leg got caught in the lid. And he just shed it because he thought I had a hold of him. He did try to turn around and bite because these guys are aggressive. I do not. So I'm all for holding and handling, arthropods. If you take the proper precautions, I support it. One thing that I will never handle or recommend that anybody else handles is a Scolopendra. Do not hold these centipedes. It's not going to be a good time. You're not going to have fun holding them. You're going to be nervous the whole time, and you're not actually going to be holding them. You're going to be letting them crawl on you. Now, for the most part, I think I could let a Scolopendra crawl on me. But I would not want to be alone because I would stand completely still. There's certain steps and certain contingencies that you can put in place to hold one of these. I've seen people do it. People do it all the time. I do not recommend it. I don't think the risk is worth the reward of having it crawl on you. I think that, and I also think that if something happens, that it furthers the stigma about owning these arthropods as display animals, which is what they should be, display animals. Big Red was on display. Again, you saw the time frame for it was 5 years in that nice round tank with its climbing rock and stuff. Mark was bitten by a centipede. Yeah, they're aggressive. Was it a Scolopendra? Was it one of these big thick ones? Yeah. All right. So yeah, the reason I have all this centipede stuff pulled up is because we're actually going to talk about centipedes today in Cryptic Corner. So let's get right into that. So Cryptic Corner, we're talking about giant centipedes. The New World was not really unique for its centipedes. They had centipedes in Europe. They had centipedes in Africa and Asia, but the centipedes that they found in the New World were something else. They were a lot bigger and more aggressive than what we were generally used to. Now, a case can be made for the species that Big Red is. Scolopendra cespinice, that is kind of the Pacific, the Asian Pacific and Indian Ocean area. The giant centipedes live in those tropics, and they are aggressive. But that was as far away and bizarre to the Europeans as anything in the New World. So I'm just going to kind of lump those in together. Hope you understand, because when they got to the New World, in South America, they discovered the Amazonian giant. I mean, and it wasn't just the centipedes. There were the arthropods in this New World were like freaking fantastic and monstrous and gorgeous and abundant. And it's hard to say that how these people would have felt discovering these organisms, but we do know from their reports and from their art how they interacted with them. We had, because it wasn't, again, not just centipedes. We had bird eater spiders that that were made famous at this time. Because you're talking about like late the Victorian era, essentially. Yeah, let's just call it the Victorian era because this was mostly British explorers. There were some other explorers too, of course. I don't want to discount their contribution to understanding this stuff, but the reports that pass down to us through our literature and stuff are mostly from explorers in the UK. Now, to them, like things like the bird eater was an amazing discovery, and it was basically monsters made real. And we had also butterflies the size of hawks, and then of course our star of the day, the Amazonian giant centipede. Well, Scolopendra the star of the day because we're not going to stay in the Amazon, but the Scolopendra gigantea is the formal name. It has a lot of and that's what we're looking at right here on the screen. That's this long boy right here. Big red was not this species. Big red was about 10 inches from head to into the terminal legs. Scolopendra gigantea regularly exceeds 13 inches. I'm sorry to my UK friends, I'm going to measure these in inches, but we're talking, 34 centimeters would be how big Amazonian centipedes can get. Big red was about 25 centimeters. So a long arthropod, and again, quite aggressive. Now, the Amazonian ones, it can exceed that, but there's a subspecies, or some people say that there's its own species. I'm not sure where I stand on that, but it's Scolopendra galapagonensis, excuse me, Scolopendra galapagonensis, which is the giant Galapagos centipede. Let me pull up a picture of that one too. See, it popped up in the list, but it's all about tortoises. Yeah, so they look very similar when you look at images of them. They're less bright, less brightly colored, but they retain that hyper aggressive disposition. This one is throwing up its terminal legs. This is let's pull that up here. This is a defensive posture. That these fellas assume. This is not its head. It's wanting to make you think that's the head, so they will raise up their rear end with their terminal legs like that's their antenna, and move them like that's the antenna, trying to entice a predator to target that end of them for the kill shot, so that they can swing around and bite them with their venomous forceps. Because as you saw in the little Big Red intro, if you were here at the beginning of the show, that is what they use to envenomate you. They don't actually have fangs. They're not a mouth part or a modified mandible or chelicera or anything like that. They are literally legs. Centipedes, legs, for everything. Hey, we need a feature on our body to do this function. Hey, legs. Yeah, centipedes, legs. All right, so what does this have to do with cryptozoology, though, right? What does it have to do with anything cryptic in general? Because, yeah, we've talked about centipedes getting pretty big and being weird and newly discovered by Europeans and whatnot, but that's not really anything cryptic about it. But they weren't just sending back reports of 13-inch 34 centimeter centipedes. No, they were reporting much larger centipedes than that, and it wasn't just in South America, which brings us back home for me to the United States, because this is Bug Guide. You all know I talk about Bug Guide all the time. It's one of my main resources for identifying creepy crawlies for you guys. but Bug Guide had a reference to a deadly centipede. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But the Ozarks. Let's talk about the Arkansas and Missouri and a little bit of Oklahoma. There's a mountain range. There's actually two mountain ranges there. There's the one of them's called the Blue Ridge Mountains, but together they make up the Ozark Mountains or the Ozark Highlands, depending on how you want to define it, because there's not really much there that could be called mountains. But unlike the Appalachia chain, which is, down to just like green hills and stuff, or green mountains that don't, the mountain itself doesn't peak above the tree line. And in the Ozarks, it's a little different because of the way that the plateau is. That this is actually the remnants of the base of the mountains, but more like the remnants of the bones of the mountains sticking right up. So they're not green covered. Well, some of them are, but the plateau itself, once you get out there, there's not a lot of green keeping it in check. It's got a lot of bones of the earth, if you will, sticking up. It's got a lot of old rock. There are, I believe, Phanerozoic stones, boulders in the area. Elephant Rock has Phanerozoic, so it's really old rocks, and it's like the rest of that region from Iowa down through Arkansas. These highlands these areas are littered with caves, mostly limestone caves, but in these caves there's a species of centipede we call Scolopendros heros, which is the United States is the biggest centipede that we have. Actually, I think that might be challenged by by a species that's down on the tip of Florida. That's like a Caribbean species. So, but I do believe Heros is the biggest. I'll have to, if I'm wrong about that, I'll correct myself in the description or whatever down below. Anyway, so moving on, let us get into the topic of the day. So the common name for Scolopendros heros is actually the most common name. The most common name is the giant desert centipede or giant red-headed centipede. They are well known for living in the desert. There are subspecies that live all the way out to California, across the desert Southwest, pretty much from the Mississippi westward, below the Mason-Dixon line, I guess. You'll find these centipedes. But in the Ozarks, you get a special little subspecies that hasn't really reared its head in a few hundred years. Apparently, there is, or was, or never was, a deadly giant centipede that are subspecies, what I would assume is a subspecies of Scolopendros heros, that lived in the Ozarks, that exceeded the length and size and aggression of all other giant centipedes in North America, all other Scolopendros subspecies, or Scolopendros heros subspecies, I should say. Not all. The sizes for these vary from within the size of like an average Amazonian giant centipede, so as big as the Amazon giant centipede, or even the Galapagos. Did I mention how big the Galapagos giant centipedes are? Where I went into a tangent about their behavior when I pulled up the pictures of them. But they're bigger than the regular Amazonian. They're on an island, so they get some island giantism, like the rest of the things on the Galapagos Islands, and they reach about can reach up to 17 inches, which is, someone convert that to for me. I'm just keep talking. Someone convert it and put it in the side chat. It's something over. It'd be over 40 centimeters, but I'm not sure exactly where. I'm not going to do the math right now. Oh, anyway, so this is my favorite cryptid. It's weird because they're not huge. They're generally, Yeah, there are some reports of them being a couple of feet long, like that, but for the most part, they're just bigger than average. They're just large. They're in within the range, normal range of giant centipedes, but they're not in the normal range of the giant centipede species that are alleged to live in the area, that are known and documented to live in the area. We have all these early on reports of them, and even a preserved specimen. So I'm going to read just a couple of little tidbits about it. There was one incident that's been recorded, and this guy, this Silas Claiborne Turnbow, kind of a historian of the area, wrote just a section here on there's a brief stories about centipedes is what it's called. So I'm going to read this off to you. I'm drinking my coffee to clear my froggy throat this morning. Oh my gosh, I meant to put my spider earrings on and totally forgot. I was wearing them all night last night while I was streaming, while I was hanging on in Gur streams with, who else was over there? Some of you guys were over there, right? Math Pig was over there. I think Jason Jacoby was over there because we were, I'm not going to try putting it down. Screw it. It's all right. Yeah, we did the AI thing over there. It was fun. I think Robbie's doing it tonight on Math Pig's channel. Okay, so one reading this chapter need not think the Ozarks are infested with swarms of centipedes as large as alligators, for such is not the case. Of course, centipedes are here and have been since the country has been known to the whites. Known to the whites. At least he acknowledges like colonialism there, which is, for a turn of the century. When was this written? 1925. Yeah, so turn of the century. I think that's a little progressive to say. Yeah, because normally like this is discovered America. There's people here already. It always rubbed me the wrong way. But at least he's acknowledging that, hey, this is just by the white people, which means Europeans, and we're all on board with that. And no doubt will be here as long as our Earth exists. I hope so. They're beautiful creatures, fascinating creatures. Yet, as to a number, they are nothing in comparison here, like they are in warmer climates. We make no pretension to give a scientific description of centipedes, but give only such accounts about them as gathered here and there from early residents. David Coiner, who lived in Big Creek in Taney County, informed me that one day Jim Wood, a man by the name of Johnson, while in the hills salting cattle on the head of Little Creek that puts in Lick Creek below Gainesville. So puts in, he's talking about the creeks merging. Noticed a centipede 8 inches long crawl out from under a rock. Having a large empty bottle with them, they managed to induce it to crawl into the bottle and corked it quickly, carried the bottle to Gainesville, Missouri, and presented it to Dr. Arnold, who placed the centipede in a jar filled with alcohol and kept it in his drugstore. So this artifact, I actually made a replica of this. You've seen it. It's at the house, but I made a replica of this out of Big Red. That's why I wanted to put that video up. So this used to be kept in a drugstore in this little Gainesville, Missouri town. I would love to track that down. Wouldn't that be amazing if I could find that? That'd be so cool. But alas, it was lost. I think I might mention that here. But a similar account is given by John Bias, who said on a certain time he had to attend a circuit court at Gainesville, Missouri, and while on his way there from Dugganville, he saw a centipede lying on a flat rock. He had an empty pint bottle with him, and he wanted to capture the centipede alive and take it to Gainesville, where he supposed he could sell it for something to help defray his expense. Dismounting, he took a stick and held it down on the centipede while he placed the mouth of the bottle before it and kept at work until it started into the mouth of the bottle and raising the stick off of it, it ran in. After corking the bottle, said John, I put the bottle in the side pocket of my coat and rode on to Gainesville. I found that the market in town was too dull to sell a centipede, for there was no demand for them, and I gave the dangerous thing to an old settler, who managed to sell it to someone for a half pint of whiskey. I have often thought it was reckless of me, catching that centipede and carrying it in my waistcoat pocket or anywhere about my person. Suppose the bottle should have happened to come uncorked. The centipede might have crawled out and stung me to death. It was between 7 and 8 inches long. So far these stories are, within the on the large side of what we call the Scolopendra heroes. So the North America's largest species of centipede, the giant red-headed centipede. Usually, if you look, the max length that they generally give for them is somewhere between 6 and 8 inches. So we are, right around there. You do see a lot of places that'll say they don't reach 8 inches. That 6 is probably about the maximum size. But I've seen some huge ones in people's collections, so I would dispute that. My Cespedes that I had, Big Red, was 10 inches long. I mean, he lived in a round thing, so he was always laying against the side, so I could keep a soft measure and measure him all the time. Always keeping track of that. And he was every bit of 10 inches, but usually you'll see that they only reach about 8 inches. So food for thought. Many years ago, the writer was reliably informed that an early resident of Stone County, Missouri, by the name of Tom May, and who lived in Rayleigh's Creek, a tributary of James River, came near losing one of his little boys, who was supposed to have been stung by a centipede. The child was barefoot, and while playing at the foot of a low hill near the house, he screamed out in agony and ran towards the dwelling. Some of the family ran and met the child and saw that he had been stung on the foot. Going to the spots that the boy indicated, they discovered a centipede, 7 1/2 inches long, and killed it. It is said the child lay a year before he recovered. All the flesh surrounding the room slid off. When the sore healed, the child remained a cripple. And I've heard stories like that about centipede bites too. I think you can have a bad necrotic reaction to a lot of venoms. Some people can have fatal allergic reactions to venoms. So it's not out of the question. Be careful with any arthropod, any venomous animal in general, because you don't know how your body's going to react to that venom. You don't. A bee sting can kill somebody. A bee sting can cripple you. That's not out of the question. So be careful. Don't send your kids out into the wild with barefoot. But this isn't, again, the 1800s, so I'm not going to fault them. And the kid probably didn't even have any shoes. Rural Arkansas has always been sort of a hot spot for poor people to try to eke out a living. During this time frame, I think this was back when they started discovering diamonds in Arkansas. So a lot of poor folk were moving from the city out into the rough and wild land of Arkansas to see if they couldn't earn their fortune. Okay, so Mr. G.W. Thurman tells about himself and Moses Lathorpe dissecting a centipede on Sunday in 1859. They were in a glade on top of the river bluff on the north side of the river, 3 miles below Forsyth. So I don't know if you all know what bluffs are, because it's a terminology we use here. I don't know if they use it universally, but it's like the stony hills on either side of a river. Those are bluffs. So they're kind of like highlands. Okay, the centipede was 8 inches long, and after killing it, said Mr. Thurman, we proceeded to take a piece for the sake of curiosity and examine its stingers. It was a rough dissection, for the instruments used were sticks and sharp stones. Yeah, that's going to be a rough dissection. We had no microscope, but our eyes were good, and we were able to distinguish all of its parts. I did not suppose our examination is of much importance to the scientific world, yet we learned something for ourselves. Its pincers or teeth resemble hooks like hook-like forms or tongs, and were of a dark brown color. Evidently, there was a stinger in each leg. Now that is a claim that we'll see reemerging as we look through these cases, but the walking legs, the behind the forceptual, the front legs that are modified into the stingers, that the other legs can envenomate you as well. Let's see, where was I? Each pointer contained a large stinger. The middle one was the largest, and the stinger was flat-shaped, resembling a disc knife, and about 1/6 of an inch in length. This was my first and only dissection of a centipede, and I don't want any more of it for my part. Okay, so I think that I don't know for sure what they're talking about with the disc knife part. There should be, with centipedes, there should be just the two forceptuals and then the mouth parts underneath. So I wondered if maybe it was the mouth parts that they're referring to, but I don't know if I described them as disc knife-like. Anyway, let me pop back out and check with the live chat, make sure everybody's still with me. When I was bitten by a centipede, I felt like crap for 12 hours. I don't imagine centipedes' bites would be fatal. I think maybe to a small child, Mark, though. I think that's what the claim is here. And same with like most spider bites, too. They're not for a healthy adult. They're just going to suck. But for like a child or a sick person, maybe somebody who's elderly, somebody who's suffering with an immunocompromised disposition, it could be deadly. A spider bite or a centipede bite or a scorpion sting or a wasp sting. You know, they can turn the tables on you depending on your situation. Let's see here. There's almost no venomous creatures here in the UK, apart from adders, apparently. 45 years and I've never seen one, but they're supposed to be common. I don't know anyone who's seen one. You have false widow spiders. They're venomous. All spiders are venomous, but most of them can't break your skin. The false widow spider can break your skin, but they don't usually bite people, though. And when they do, there's literally minimal effect on your body. So we've talked about that at length before on the show, too. False widow spiders and the hype around them. Not really as much of an issue as they make it out to be. I think there are centipedes. There's like stone centipedes and things, though. So in-house centipedes, and they're not really dangerous to humans. You don't have any scorpions in the UK. It's like one extra button and then talking. Nah. I don't know what that means. Let me see. We're the damn royal family. Okay. Talking about the royal family. All right. Anyway, let's get back to the reports here from Arkansas and Missouri. Most of these have been from Missouri so far, which is the state that I grew up in. Maybe partially responsible for this being my favorite cryptid of all time. Let's see. R.M. Jones of near Protum, Missouri, tells of finding a centipede once imprisoned in a hollow tree. Mr. Jones said that after his father, John Jones, settled on a flat land on the east side of Big Buck Creek in the southeast part of Taney County, his father told him one day in the autumn of 1861 to split some rails to build a hog pen. Going out across the pond hollow onto the flat of land, he fell a post oak tree. A post oak tree must be a nickname for a species at the time, and 1 and 1/2 feet in diameter. There was a small cavity in the butt of the tree. After chopping off one rail cut, he found that the hollow extended only 4 or 5 feet into the rail cut and was perfectly sound above it. After splitting the log open, he was astonished to find a centipede 8 inches long, coiled in a knot in the upper part of the cavity. At first, it appeared to be no life about it. I took sticks, he said, and unrolled it and found that it was alive. It was wrapped around numerous young centipedes, which were massed together in the shape of a little ball. The old centipede was almost white in color. After a thorough examination of the stump and the ground around it, I found no place where the centipede could have crawled in. Neither in the log was there any place where it could enter. How it got there, I'm not able to explain, and how long it had been an inhabitant, there's another mystery to me. So centipedes do that. That's how they breed. Or how they brood. They wrap themselves around their little babies. They're good mothers. They take good care of their babies until they're ready to scuttle out of the log or whatever kind of hideout they're living in. Now, as far as how it got in and out, centipedes are like cockroaches that they can squeeze into like any crack. They're like cockroaches, but better. They are so much better at squeezing into cracks than cockroaches are, because they're laterally compressed. That's one of the things that you will see a difference between millipedes and centipedes when anybody's describing them. Is for the most part, centipedes are laterally compressed, while millipedes maintain a sort of tube-like shape. Now, we might not even be able to detect the narrow little slots that giant centipede is worming its way through to get inside of this log to be safe to brood its babies. But that doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, obviously something had to have been there to allow the centipede to lay its eggs and hatch its eggs and have the babies, because it would have to have bred recently. It couldn't have been stuck in there for years, or whatever the implication is here. I don't see that as a reliable assessment of the situation. I think that something might have been overlooked. That there may have been a crack or chip or hole or layered little weaving pathway down into the side of that tree that our friend did not manage to spot. Mr. Jones also related that one day himself and the writer's brother, James D. Turnbow, this is the guy writing the story here, this is his brother involved, who is dead now, were together at the foot of the bluff near a spring on the north side of the river, just above Bradley's Ferry. The spring wrung out of the slough bank. Jim was a lad of a boy and had gone with Jones squirrel hunting. They had become separated a short distance when Jones heard Jim call out that something is trying to catch him. Jones, thinking it was a panther or catamount, which in North America would be the same thing. There's no difference between a catamount and a panther. They're both puma con colors. Ran to him and was much surprised to see an enormous centipede pursuing the boy. When Jones reached the spot, the centipede stopped and bowed its body up, preparatory to jumping. And while it was in this position, Jones shot it. He said it was 12 inches long and 1 inch wide. Now we're getting into some monster sizes here. Yes, It's going to be a giant centipede. Where was I? Yeah, 12 inches long. That's 30 centimeters. Talking of centipedes of an unusual size, C.W. Wilkes Griffin, who lived on Mountain Creek in the northeast corner of Marion County, Arkansas, related to me that on a certain occasion, he and Woodrow Owen were together on Mountain Creek and saw a large centipede run into a hollow stump. Not knowing how else to route it out with safety to ourselves, we set the stump on fire, said Mr. Griffin, and compelled the centipede to run out at another hole in the stump, and we killed it. It measured 12 inches in length, so that's another foot long, alleged Scolopendra that undocumented, almost twice as long as what the species should actually be measured at. Again, we're going off local people's reports here, but it's peculiar that it's all around this one little hot spot in Arkansas where they're being reported at these sizes. We don't see these sizes being reported anywhere else. Just is peculiar in and of itself. So I like to pretend that there is a subspecies of Scolopendra somewhere in the rocky caves and crevices beneath the Ozark Mountains that does exceed the average size. That we just it's either gone extinct in recent years or has reclused itself back into the depths due to these people setting stumps on fire and shooting it whenever it rears its little head. All right, William Patton, who settled on Clear Creek in Marion County, Arkansas, in 1854 and became totally blind, is now dead, says that one day, while his eyesight was good, he was in the woods at the foot of in the woods on stock hunting. I don't know what that means. When about 1.5 miles west of where the village of Powell now is, he noticed something a short distance from him crawl into a hollow tree at the ground. On approaching the tree, to identify the object, remarked Mr. Patton, I saw a monster centipede lying just inside the hollow, which was the object I had just observed crawl into the tree. I placed the muzzle of my rifle near the opening and shot it nearly in twain. And taking a long stick, pulled it out of the hollow and finished killing it with a stone. I had no way of measuring it accurately, but a close estimate proved that it was no less than 14 inches long and over an inch wide. So an inch wide, that's huge, just like that. 14 inches. That is, again, we've talked about that with the, it's like 14 inches, that's somewhere around 40 centimeters, right? Again, my UK friends can help correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody can crunch the numbers for me. It's lazy. The biggest centipede found in the Ozark that I have a record of was captured alive by Bent Music on Jenny Creek in Marion County in 1860. Henry Onstott, an uncle of the writer, and Harvey Laughlin, who was a cousin of mine and kept a drugstore in Yellville and collected rare specimens of lizards, serpents, spiders, horned frogs, and centipedes, and kept them in large glass jars, which sat on the counter. The jar was full of alcohol, and the collection was put in the jars for preservation as they were brought in. Amongst the collection was the monster centipede mentioned above. It was such an unusual size that it made on almost shut. Oh, I guess that's supposed to be made one almost shudder to look at it. Bryce Millum, who was a merchant at Yellville when Mr. Music brought the centipede to town, says that he assisted in the measuring of it before it was put in the alcohol, and the length was a total of 18 inches. It attracted a great deal of attention and was the largest centipede the writer ever saw. The jar with its content was either destroyed or carried off during the heat of the war. I'm talking about the Civil War. Henry Onstott died in Yellville and is buried in the old cemetery 1/2 a mile west of town. So that is the giant centipede accounts of Mr. Turnbow here, and yeah, we have centipedes of larger than average size, centipedes of twice the average size, and we culminate with an 18-inch centipede, which is 4 times as long as any known specimen of Scolopendra heros. So if this specimen from Marion County, Arkansas, Yellville existed, it would have been the largest specimen of Scolopendra heros ever known. Maybe, potentially, depending on how those measurements pan out, the largest specimen of Scolopendra in the world known species, because, as I said, the largest, absolutely largest, hands down known species is Scolopendra galapagonensis, and they reached 17 inches. So if this Yellville specimen of Scolopendra heros was indeed 18 inches in length, it would be larger than that. But we'll never know, because the war between the states, or I'm sure as they called it in Marion County, Arkansas, the War of Northern Aggression. We'll never know. We'll just never know. I want to find this artifact so that, again, I have a replica of this in my hive. You've seen it. Made out of Big Red, who we saw at the beginning of the video. But that was Cryptic Corner for today. A little bit different, maybe a little weird, a little bizarre. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my favorite cryptid. 43. If it was 43 centimeters, it would be like 3 centimeters wide. Yeah, so it was pretty big. Yeah, so that was Cryptic Corner, the mysterious giant centipedes of Arkansas. So my favorite cryptid. My favorite. Let me pop out to the friendly folks in the live chat and see what we have going on out here. Monster tracks. I wish there were a giant antlion. That'd be amazing. It'd be like a sarlacc, right? Something that catches, maybe even catches like lizards and mice and stuff like that. Digging deep trenches. But we do have more show to go. Don't worry. This is not the end of the show. It's just the end of Cryptic Corner. I just wanted to make sure I answer any questions about the centipedes. We have centipedes just as big as the Amazon, I swear. Thomas Jefferson probably. Yeah, that's what he was like about the megafauna of North America. He was like, we have giant mammoths and stuff, so yeah, wow. Jefferson thought mammoths were still alive in the West, somewhere out there. Would have been cool if they were, of course. So the UK wildlife is as exciting and dangerous as their food. Funny. All right, so I know a lot of people show up. Yeah, I'm not done. Don't leave. Do not leave, because I'm about to pop over and do some assessment of young Earth creationism, as I want to do, and as I'm sure at least some of my audience is here specifically for. This is their favorite part. And we're actually going to be tackling, last week we did a response to Standing for Truth. So, in all fairness, I thought the other half of Standing for Truth, other than Donnie, deserves some attention too. So we're going to be we're going to be handling Mr. Raw Matt over at his channel, Young Earth Creation. So let's get to it. I actually prefer myself down here. Yes, that is how I like my layout. Anyway, let's get to it. Yeah. All right. So this video is called "Does Science Point to a Soul?" I've only watched a couple minutes into it, but I thought we could have some fun with it. So here we go.
One perspective is called reductive materialistic physicalism.
Oh, let's start over again.
Does science point to the soul? In neuroscience, there are two main perspectives. One perspective is called reductive materialistic physicalism. It states that the brain and mind are equivalent, which means the soul is absent. Another perspective is called mind-body dualism. It states that the brain and mind are distinct from each other, which means the soul is present. The neuroscientific evidence for mind.
Hold on, let's look at this graph here. Okay, so perspective, reductive materialist, physicalism. I don't like reductive materialist, sounds condescending to me. I am a physicalist, so this is me. I do think that what we perceive as the soul is a emergent property of the human brain and the way our neurons fire electronic pulses and chemical reactions in the brain. I think that those are the conglomeration of all of that together is what we have for millennia called the soul. I don't think it's a separate, just my opinion. I'm not a dualist. A dualist thinks that the soul and the mind are separate, and that this is kind of a misrepresentation of this, because it's not saying that mind is equal to brain. We say that mind is emergent from brain. So this is, so it would be more, you put, you wouldn't put it equal, you'd put a, what do they call it, you know what I'm talking about, the, I can't think of the names of them, greater than, simple, so this would be a subset of, this would be a subset of this. Whereas to these folks, they're completely separate, they're two separate things, and one of them just, the mind is emergent of the soul and not of the brain. Okay.
The neuroscientific evidence for mind-body dualism includes the following. 1. Unsplittable mind. 2. Non-material intellect. 3. Non-material cognition.
All right, so I hope we get into this a little bit deeper, because unsplittable mind is not, I mean, that's not even evidently true. There's evidence against that, demonstrable evidence that you can go out and find right now. Non-material intellect, we'll have to find out what they mean by that. Non-material cognition, we're going to find out.
4. Free agency. 5. Unlocalizable thought. 6. Corroborated out-of-body events.
Oh boy, that sounds like it'd be fun.
Unsplittable mind. When the neuroscientist Roger Sperry split the brains of epileptic patients, he found that they were still the same person with the same sense of self, even after the procedure. He showed that while it was possible to split the brain, it was not possible to split the mind. The mind was metaphysically simple. He concluded that the intellect in human beings is not material.
And this has been well debunked with multiple cases of people who have parts of their brain that are completely different people, that have completely different opinions. Some of them maybe, one half of the brain may be theist, and the other half may be an atheist. I mean, we're talking completely different personalities and individual characteristics. This is, I'm not sure when this Roger Sperry gentleman, you have citations here, which is one thing I do appreciate when we get some citations for claims being made. Let's see, it said that was 1. All right, well, we're not going to dig for it right now, but I will say that I can give you medical journals about people with that have a split mind. There's entire there's an entire field of psychology and neurology that studies that is specifically for that. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
which points to the soul. 2. Non-material intellect. When the neuroscientist Wilder Penfield studied epileptic patients, he was, firstly, unable to locate a region to stimulate the patient's agency in a neurosurgery, and secondly, was unable to find seizures that generate intellectual thought. Why are there no intellectual seizures? Penfield asked. Why is there no place to stimulate the patient's agency? Those things should be expected under materialistic physicalism. The answer he found was that the intellect and will of human beings are not material.
Let me repeat that. I didn't follow that.
Those things should be intellectual seizures, Penfield asked.
Okay.
And secondly, was unable to find seizures.
Come on.
Firstly, unable to locate a region to stimulate the patient's agency in a neurosurgery, and secondly, was unable to find seizures that generate intellectual thought. Why are there no intellectual seizures? Penfield asked. Why is there no place to stimulate the patient's agency? Those things should be expected under materialistic physicalism. The answer he found was that the intellect and will of human beings are not material, which points to the soul. Penfield became a mind-body dualist.
What? Did you guys follow that? Let me go back. Let me. Penfield dualism. Because I didn't understand his interpretation of that, and I'm not trying to. Was it two N's in Penfield? I'm not trying to like say, hey, you're full of crap. Yeah, one N. Okay, so let's see if we can understand what they're talking about a little better. We go out here and read somebody else's interpretation of Penfield. Blah blah blah. In a podcast discussion. Surgeon Michael, we want to talk about how many famous neuroscientists became dualist. That is, they concluded there is something about the human being that goes beyond matter based on observations they made during their work. Among them was Wilder Penfield, who offered 3 reasons for his change of mind. Wilder Penfield, a neurosurgeon at the University of Montreal in Canada, who was really a pioneer in surgery for epilepsy, who worked back in the mid-20th century for several decades, and he did surgery on probably upwards of about 1,000 patients who had intractable epilepsy. Okay, he's a surgeon. Okay, I get it. Where are we? Dr. Egner goes on to explain that the brain does not experience pain, so a neurosurgery patient can comfortably remain conscious only local anesthesia. The surgeon can then communicate with the patient to be sure that the treatment is not damaging speech or movement. He started his career as a materialist. He thought the whole mind came from the brain, and he was just going to study it. And he ended his career 30 years later. He was a passionate dualist. He said that there are parts of the mind that is not from the brain. He had several lines of reasoning that convinced him of that. One line of reasoning was that the mapping of people's brains and again, he mapped upwards of thousands of people this way. He would hundreds of individual stimulations of the surface of the brain to see what happened. The people would have all sorts of things happen, that they would have their arm move, or they would feel a tingling, or they would see flashes of light, or sometimes they would have a memory that they would have an impediment. Sometimes they could speak for a minute or two after a certain spot was touched, or couldn't speak for a minute or two after a certain spot was touched. But Penfield noted that in probably hundreds of thousands of different individual stimulations, he never once stimulated the power of reason. He's never stimulated the intellect. He never stimulated a person to do calculus or to think of an abstract concept like justice or mercy. Okay, I think because I don't know the extent of his research, but I kind of wonder how you would stimulate those things. It seems like you would need to stimulate reason or intellect. That you would need to provide. Wouldn't you need to provide the patient with something to be stimulated by, other than just like poking them? Those aren't those parts of the brain that would cause. And again, this guy was. You're talking about that mostly like that up to the 1950s. I think he retired in the 50s. And anyway, or maybe I said the 70s. Anyway, so this is kind of delving way back into. We've come a long way with our understanding of neuroscience and how to stimulate the brain since Mr. Penfield's day. But I was hoping there'd be more like than just, hey, you can't stimulate these abstract thoughts by poking the brain. I didn't know it was just going to be that simple. So anyway, moving on. Let's move on.
3. Non-material cognition. The neuroscientist Adrian Owen illustrated how humans in persistent vegetative states have the same mental activity as healthy human beings when asked certain questions inside functional MRIs. Owen illustrated that certain aspects of the mind cannot be destroyed by severe brain damage. In other words, the mind is not material.
What aspects of the mind? What are you talking about? Brain activity and being able to detect brain activity, which is someone in a vegetative state, that's the most you can do. In what way do you infer that that's a mind? Brain activity is the mind? That sounds like materialist to me. That sounds like physicalism to me.
This points to the soul. 4. Free agency. The neuroscientist Benjamin Libet demonstrated that when human beings refuse to act on impulses that come their way, the brain signal is absent. This means that human beings have the non-material free choice to decide whether to act upon incoming impulses.
Take that, Calvinist. So, this is like, in this argument, you can take it to a Calvinist to say, hey, Benjamin Libet says that Calvinists don't believe in a soul, and see how far that gets you. I don't think that this is a good line of reasoning, but we'll keep going.
Its non-material component is part of the soul. Libet himself became a dualist. 5. Unlocalizable thought. Higher abstract thoughts and intellectual functions are not localizable in the brain. This is more expected dualism, and thus points to the fact that they are likely non-material. This points to the soul.
Whoa. Abstract thoughts are not localizable? So where do they, you're claiming that they come, so this goes beyond claiming a soul here. If you say that abstract thoughts are not localizable, that means you're getting thoughts and information coming from some external source. What? That you're talking about the Akashic records. Who would have thought that would come up twice in 2 weeks? You're talking about information coming from a extra dimension, I guess. Yeah, we're gonna have to unpack that a little bit. I doubt you're going to. I think you're just gonna slide right into, looks like out-of-body experiences was what's next. The least convincing of all your lines of evidence, out-of-body experiences. But let's.
6. Corroborated out-of-body events. Out-of-body experiences that are corroborated by external evidence. When the patient was clinically dead with no brain activity and no heartbeat, the patient could recall certain details that the patient could not otherwise have known, such as seeing a special shoe on the rooftop of the building, or seeing a certain number on a sticker of a machine, or reciting the doctor's conversation during the procedure.
Right, yeah, and none of that has been corroborated. They've always failed. There's never been a successful demonstration of out-of-body experiences. That's why they're not accepted as a actual phenomena that happens outside of the mind, because the numbers printed on top of the machines, that kind of stuff, That's where they fail. I don't know where you're thinking those are successful at. Present me with a case file on it and I'll look into it. But as far as my research has presented, and I spent a lot of time looking into this stuff, there's no supported evidence of someone having out of body experience where they were clinically dead, where the things that they experienced in that state have been corroborated with other individuals or with evidence, like you talked about the number on top of the machine. I don't think that's ever happened. Please present me the case.
This provides evidence that there exists a non-material component, namely the soul. Under physicalism, no memory should have been formed. In this case, a memory was formed. This provides evidence against physicalism, and it provides evidence for dualism. One counter-argument is that all near-death experiences were generated because of oxygen deprivation. This argument is completely false. In certain events, a corroborated verified
Why? You just say it's false. Okay.
memory was formed when the patient was clinically dead with no brain activity and no heartbeat. This goes against physicalism.
Why? So I'm conceding that no brain activity is when we, no heartbeat and all that is when we consider somebody physically dead. But people come back from those states. These cases are people coming back from these states. So because we declared them clinically dead incorrectly does not mean that they were literally clinically dead and experienced an afterlife. It means that when we declared them dead, that it was a mistake because they weren't dead because they weren't dead, they're still alive. So there was still something going on in their biology keeping them alive so they could revive. There was still the spark was still in them, even though we couldn't detect it. And that spark was experiencing the world through its nervous system that we all experience the world through.
Another counterargument is that the patients guessed the event. This argument is completely false. Firstly, specific details that were unique to the situation were mentioned, such as the doctor's unique conversations. Secondly, an experiment was performed where they compared patients who had an out-of-body experience and those who did not have one. Those who had one were the only ones who accurately described the procedure. Those who did not have one described the procedure wrongly. They were unable to guess it. Another counterargument.
So the people who don't have an out-of-body experience were asked to guess what the procedure was like while they were sedated, I suppose is the claim there, and that they were not able to accurately guess what the doctor was doing. Now, I've been sedated. I think most of us, probably as adults, probably have at some point or other for surgery or whatever, and come out of it to where I was aware of what was come out of my sedation to where I was aware of kind of what was going on around me, but I could not move or interact or talk or anything. Couldn't really open my eyes, but I could hear what was going on around me. And then the anesthesiologist, like, oh, they're coming out of it and put them back under, and that was that. And that happens. It happens under anesthesia because anesthesia is a very, very precise branch of medical science. I don't think we give anesthesiologists enough credit, to be honest. It's so delicate and sensitive, and there's so many variables. Try to keep people under for the right amount of time with the right amount of drugs and keeping everything in order like that. It's not an easy process. So shout out to the anesthesiologist out there.
Is that the patients describe the events due to chance. This argument is completely false. To accurately describe the events would be like getting the jackpot in lottery 15 times.
Or it would be like coming out of your sedation a little bit and picking up on some of the stuff that's going on around you.
Times in a row, which can only realistically happen if someone has interfered with the system and cheated. Another counter-argument is that the patients might have had a predisposition toward the afterlife because of a psychological need. This argument is completely false. Firstly, even atheists experience the out-of-body experiences, and they do not have a predisposition toward the afterlife. Secondly, Religious people do not have a predisposition either, and thus it is unexpected.
Religious people do have a predisposition to expect experiences of the afterlife. Their brains are primed for it. That's that's why we have so many experiences reported among religious people, because you prime your brain to have these experiences. So when you pray, or when you sin, or whatever you're doing that you're expecting divine intervention or divine judgment about, you're going to have experiences, or it's not out of the question to convince yourself that you've had experiences. So if you feel like you've lived a sinful life, it's not out of the question for you to have a fever dream, or have a experience under sedation where you think that you're being divinely punished for your sins. If you think you've been devout, or just if you're thinking about people you missed or whatever, you have a experience when you're seeing them in the afterlife, or interacting with these people, or you're experiencing a joy or pleasure of an afterlife, you are primed for that. Your mind is primed to have that experience when your brain's like, hey, are we dead? Let's do the afterlife real, and it plays it out for you.
Thirdly, negative hellish events were reported, which are not desirable. Another counter-argument is that the near-death experiences can be replicated using recreational drugs. This is completely false.
No, it's true. That's what DMT is all about. It replicates these mystical experiences. It triggers the brain to create those. There's something to be said about the brain's natural production of DMT in our hormonal, in our endocrine system, triggered by our endocrine system, and it's seems like it, when we go into a state like I was talking about, where your brain's like, hey, are we dead? That's what it's doing. Is it at that point it releases DMT to kind of ease the brain into this into dying, essentially. And when it does that, you have these experiences, which are the same as if you artificially take DMT.
False. Firstly, they cannot yield verifiable corroborated events. Secondly, are not analogous and have different content when one studies the details. Question.
They do corroborate events, though. You're still aware of the events when you're on DMT. What?
Can explain near-death experiences? No, they cannot. Evolution is focused on encouraging
evolution of neurology. Why wouldn't that explain near-death experiences? Like I was just talking about the brain releasing certain cocktails upon death. That is going to benefit you and the individuals around you as you ease into a state of non-existence, as opposed to what being in panic, terror, being having a negative reaction to the fact that you're dying, as opposed to thinking that you're going off someplace peaceful. You're wounded or whatever, and your hunting party has pulled you off into a valley or something to make you comfortable while you pass away. Is it going to be better for you to slowly fade away and feel like you're seeing your dead relatives or whatever? Is it going to be better for you to scream and holler and be like, I don't want to die, I'm scared, while predators are waiting to consume your remains? Evolutionarily, this makes total sense for your body to naturally produce cocktails to calm you into death.
Survival, while near-death experiences encourages death. Another counter-argument is panpsychism, which is the viewpoint that the mind is a fundamental constituent of everything that exists, and that mind is in all matter. This viewpoint has several problems. Firstly, conscious states and brain states are contingently connected. This contingent connection is not explained under panpsychism, and thus panpsychism has a lower explanatory power in comparison to dualism. Secondly, there is the unity problem for panpsychism.
I don't support panpsychism or dualism.
Many minds do not result in a macro mind. There is a gap there.
I don't believe in panpsychism or a macro mind, so I'm not even going to touch this talking point. I think that they're both, that dualism and panpsychism don't really I don't find them compelling.
Question. Are the near-death experiences consistent with Christianity? Yes, they are. The core
And other Abrahamic beliefs, as well as Zoroastrianism. Some of I think pretty much all religions would have allowance for near-death experiences. But let's hear why it's special to Christianity.
facts of the near-death experiences are consistent with Christianity. The differences only emerge because of cultural interpretations of the core facts. John Burke states the following, quote, "Even though they vary a fair amount, these accounts have a common core, and incredibly, it's entirely consistent with what we're told about the afterlife in the Bible."
Why? No, the Christian ones are, yeah, where you experience. Well, I don't even know if they are, because we don't really hear too much about what your expectations are when you die. I believe there are entire sects of Christianity that think you cease to exist until Jesus comes back. So there's no like afterlife that you're going right to when you die. You're like in like a limbo state or a stasis until Jesus comes back. There's that argument among Christians, and there are. Let's hear what maybe he's going to explain what these experiences are actually like and why they're consistent with the Bible. Instead of saying incredibly, it's entirely consistent with the Bible. Because I don't buy it. I don't. Go ahead. Oh, hold on. This is from a Lee Strobel book, "The Case for Heaven."
End of quote. Another counter argument is that the out-of-body experience was a hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
This is completely false. External independent evidence corroborates the out-of-body experience.
No, it doesn't. You just claimed that it does. It doesn't, though. There's been nothing about out-of-body experiences that you've presented so far that could not be a hallucination or hallucination coupled with slipping in and out of sedation to hear and experience what's going on physically around you and incorporating that into your hallucination.
A hallucination is only in the realm of the mind and is not part of the external world. Therefore, it was not a hallucination.
Out-of-body experiences are also not part of the external world, so that sounds like hallucination to me. There's been no evidence that so far that you've presented, other than your arguments from they're just claiming. Where I mean, you put stuff up here that claims that this is exactly like the Bible says, but with nothing to support that, just the claim.
In an article published by the prestigious medical journal Lancet, the researcher Pim van Lommel concluded that none of the alternative explanations for near-death experiences work. Pim van Lommel has said the following, quote, "The various physiological and psychological factors cannot explain the phenomenon in full."
What's wrong with that? That does not sound like he's supporting a dualistic position. He's just saying that what we understand now about physiological and psychological factors cannot explain the phenomenon in full. So what's your point here? This is not even saying dualism. It's just saying, hey, we still got stuff to learn.
End of quote. Another counter-argument is the interaction problem, which states that the body influences the mind through brain damage. For example, this argument does not influence dualism. This is to be expected under dualism, as the body is a vehicle for the soul. There is correlation, but not causation. The philosopher Jae-Kwon Kim said the following, quote, "Correlations are not explanations. They are in fact the very thing that need explaining." End of quote. Question. Can evolution account for the origin of consciousness or the soul? No, it cannot.
Why? Because there is no soul. Consciousness there is. Definitely something we have. And I want to hear, because this looks like no. Is the answer to evolution accounting for consciousness. I want to hear all about it.
Evolution only accounts for the physical. Therefore, evolution does not account for
consciousness is emergent from the physical properties of the brain and the chemical reactions and the electrical impulses and synapses and hormones and oh goodness, honey, there are so many things physical about your consciousness that you're just glossing over.
The consciousness or the soul. Another counter-argument is about epiphenomenalism, which states that the consciousness is an emergent property. This viewpoint is flawed. Epiphenomenalism does not provide an explanation for the origin of consciousness.
What? It does, though. If epiphenomenalism is what I just said about it being an emergent property, I don't know. I'm not going to claim that I've heard that word before, epiphenomenalism. But if that's the case, then I think it does give us an origin for consciousness. It's it's our storage for navigating the world. It's just humans. It's an extra big storage space.
It merely describes the issue. Therefore, it has lower explanatory power in comparison to dualism. Another counterargument is about functionalism, which is the viewpoint that the mind merely constitutes its function. This viewpoint is flawed. Functionalism only explains behavior and not sensations. Therefore, it has lower explanatory power.
Why doesn't functionalism explain sensations? The sensations are the way your brain reacts to nerve stimulation. I think that functionalism explains that pretty well. I even think that the people that you were citing, talking about brain studies earlier, are utilizing functionalism as an explanatory procedure to promote your position of dualism. So they're literally using functionalism by poking at the brain and saying, "Hey, this is the reaction that we're getting," and "Hey, I thought we'd be able to explain this, and we can't." That's your argument earlier, and now you're saying, "Hey, it can't just be about its function. It has to have explanatory power."
Comparison dualism. Question: is consciousness in the cerebral cortex? No, it is not. Consciousness is not localizable. Question: what are a few physical effects that require non-physical causes? A few examples include the singularity, black holes, general relativity, and quantum entanglement.
What are physical effects that require non-physical causes?
In conclusion, science points to the soul, for real.
I don't know, guys. Oh, are you convinced that science points to the soul? I'm not. I didn't find that compelling at all. I found a lot to complain about, actually. I'm complaining anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I found a lot to take issues with, I guess. Let's meet that. What is that? Oh, that's today's stream. I didn't know Jay Pasick was here. Hey, Jay. What am I doing here? Yeah. Okay, so that was Creation Watch, and we got to hammer our way through some young Earth creationism. I hope you enjoyed that. Is there evidence for a soul? Were you compelled that there's a soul? Do you think that dualism is a more reasonable position than physicalism? Please feel free to tell me in the comments down below. But we're going to move right along because we got more science to go through today, and about a half an hour left. Then I'm going to do it, and I'm going to power through it. And so, moving right along, we're going to talk about giant bees. Back to the bugs. Today's going to be a bug-heavy episode, which is kind of nice because we haven't had a real bug-heavy episode yet, and this was kind of my jumping-off platform for this whole channel. So it may look like I'm talking about Lord of the Rings here, but I'm not, or Game of Thrones or whatever. I'm not. We're talking about these bees, these giant bees. Here's what triggers giant honeybees to do the wave, and they do the wave, and it's super cool. They got a video of it? Yes. All right, so first things first, let's watch the bees do the wave. Pretty cool stuff. It's obviously it's some sort of signaling that we're doing here, but let's learn about it. You guys want to learn about it with me and why it happens? It's called the shimmer. Let's see. This picture says giant honeybees form open nest covered by other materials and shimmer when some predators come near. A study is revealing new details about what sets the bees in motion. Giant honeybees send waves rippling across their open nest by flipping their abdomens upwards in coordination, a sight that approaching predators seem to shy away from. A new study is revealing details about what triggers the behavior known as shimmering. That shimmering is strongest when the bees are shown a dark object that moves against a light background under bright ambient light. Researchers report in September's Journal of Experimental Biology that the experimental setup stimulates animals such as hornets, one of the bee's main predators, flying against the bright sky, and shows what visual cues set off the behavior, the researchers say. The behavior is intriguing as this is possibly one way in which a species of animal communicates with another to warn they are capable of defending themselves, says Kavitha Kannan, a neurobiologist at the University of Konstanz in Germany, who was not involved in the study. Giant honeybees, including Apis dorsata, physically form open nests uncovered by other materials in areas like tree branches and window ledges. In the new study, the research worked with a dorsata nest in roof rafters. Standing near the hive, behavioral ecologist Sanjesh Vijayan moved circular cardboard pieces of different sizes in shades of gray and black against a gray and black background. The bees shimmered when the objects moved against the gray backdrop, but did not when the contrast was flipped. That's probably because the black on gray setup resembled a natural predator or a natural condition, says Sanjesh, who goes by his first name, as is common in many parts of southern India. These are open nesting colonies, so they are always exposed to the bright sky. The team observed little shimmering during the dim twilight periods or dawn and dusk, since shimmering is a response meant to perceived by a predator or other unwelcome visitors, such as a bee from another colony. The researchers think that the other defensive behaviors might be at play during the dim conditions. We also think that shimmering is a specialized response towards hornets because it's not really been reported in cases of birds. It's not really been reported in cases of birds attacking or birds flying past these colonies. Sajesh says birds instead elicit a mass stinging response. Yeah, that's more what we expect as mammals too. That could be because approaching birds loom comparatively large in the bee's visual field, and at that point, the bee's attitude may be, let's not take any more chances, just sting, Sajesh says. In both hives, shimmering completely vanishes when the bees were presented with a smallest object, in this case, a circle 4 centimeters in diameter. The results suggest that there is a minimum size threshold that triggers the ripples. Shimmering getting ahead of myself here. Shimmering strengths do not wane even when the bees were exposed to an artificial setup repeatedly. Perhaps because it's advantageous to stay vigilant against predators like hornets that make persistent attacks. How exactly the bees perceive the objects in the study is not yet known. They could be actually seeing the objects moving, or they could be responding to a reduction in their visual field, Sujesh says. The research plans to explore that question further. They are also designing experiments with LED screens to tweak the background colors and patterns and objects and shapes to figure out what types of shapes and even motions might matter to the bees. I always thought shimmering was super cool. Let's watch the shimmer video one more time so we can appreciate what's going on here. Let's rewatch that. We got time. Give us a nice pulse of abdomens. Oh, it's reminding me of doing like the wave at a football game. Anyway, it's kind of a short episode today, but that's been our Hive Science. We are looking at giant bee shimmering. Now, what have we done today? We went and looked through the history of giant centipedes in the New World, prominently focusing on the Ozark region, which constitutes the homeland of my favorite cryptid, which is the Ozark giant centipede. Doesn't get enough spotlight because it's not as sensational as the rest, but an 18-inch centipede in the Ozarks is super cool to me. Then we had Young Earth Creation, as presented by Raw Matt, making a case for dualism in the soul. I was not convinced. I don't think my audience was either. Maybe they were. And then finally we wrapped up with, yes, the shimmering bees. And that is all I had on the docket this morning. Are there any other questions or concerns before I say goodbye? Is there any other questions or concerns? Because that's how I end my calls when I talk to doctors and stuff at work. My neighbor has a bottle brush bush. There's a haven for honeybees and hummingbirds. Good, yeah. They need something to eat. They're hungry. You're in Arkansas, Reverb Twang, a native of Arkansas? We have to pretend bugs are dumb, or else we couldn't drive cars or use bug spray. Yeah. Are they figuring out how they communicate with one hive to another? Yeah, there was some mention about them suggesting this might be a response to bees from other colonies, and there may be a shimmer response to that, but mostly they're thinking it's in response to hornets, which do pose one of the biggest problems to any bee colony. See here, Jason. I saw that in Blanco, Texas, when someone cut down a tree with a hive inside. The bees didn't attack anyone. They just all left at once, and it provided shade. Yeah, bees aren't super aggressive for the most part. Hornets are. Yeah, you don't mess with a hornet. I just went to Monroe, Oklahoma today on the Vulcan. Fun show today. Thank you, Dee. Thank you for popping in, Misha the Law. Good to see you, girl. Reverb Twang's been in here. Native Atheist. We had some Killed by Bigfoot. Lots of new people popped in here towards the end of the show. Kind of reluctant to end it with all you beautiful folks coming in here to see the bees and giant bees are a thing. They're about thumb size. They're not super huge, but they are giant as far as bees are concerned. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in to Live from the Hive this Saturday, September 17th, 2022, where we talked about some cool stuff today. Make sure you show up next week again, as I do this show on a weekly basis, 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, so 10:30 Eastern Time. And I always have something wild on the docket. We do CryptoCorner, where we talk about our more sensational woo-wee claims, where things are like cryptozoology, ufology, ghost, things like that. What we had today, we've talked about lost civilizations and claims like that as well. All those fun topics. And then we generally go into Creation Watch, where we spar with mostly Young Earth creationists and flat earthers, and geocentrist, geocentrist and people that have those kind of ideas. So there's a lot of overlap between those two topics, unfortunately, and sometimes it does give it the sense that we're doing like a double cryptic corner or a double creation watch. But there's so much overlap with it that sometimes I have a hard time deciding which segment to put a response in, and then we do the HiveScience, which is variable and fun. So if you enjoy that kind of content, come back to the Hive every Saturday, and we will continue to delve into these things. Also, look for me over on some of my other community YouTubers that I hang out with and spend time with. Math Pig, Pale Blue Mama, Germania. Sometimes you'll see me over at JPassix or Richard Madson's. I do also pop into some creationist and younger creationist scenes. I do poke Sticking for Truth in them. As you can see, I do like to tackle their bad arguments, and you'll see me over there in the side chat sometimes when they have debates. I do spend a lot of time over at Answers in Atheism, hanging out with Speed and the gang, talking science. Where else? Leo Felius, Danny's Phil Talk. We popped in over there. Rebecca. So I'm busy in the community. You can see me around, and I always like to give my own little pieces of input on the topics at hand, whatever they may be. Thank you, Reverb Twang. I do not go by Brain Bug anymore, but I appreciate you joining us today. And I know that my intro did actually include a Brain Bug intro, old school Brain Bug intro from the Ballad of Big Red, because that's where I made that at. So I'm not ashamed of it having been Brain Bug or having put out that content. I just don't go by that now. And I will happily post my Brain Bug content as well. Oh, and Jay Pasek says he'll be addressing some of Jill's anti-LGBTQ agenda, possibly today or tomorrow. I will see if I can't pop into that with you, Jay. I do have my brother's weddings next week, so I have to go out and get a dress to wear to my brother's wedding, which is be a first-time thing for me. Going out and buying a dress like that. So see what happens. I don't know how to buy a dress, so I'm kind of concerned. Actually, I still need a +1 to take with me. So yeah, tomorrow we have a local Pride event, so I am going to that. So depending on what time it is. Anyway, please remember to be kind, take care, and we will see you next week. Love from the Hive.